Let's start by looking at this flow of trade. For centuries before 1450, a highly profitable network connected India to Europe. This flowchart shows the basic dynamic. India exported luxury goods like precious stones, silk, and cotton, often called calico, westward. In return, a massive amount of European wealth in the form of gold and silver flowed east to pay for it. But in the 15th century, Europe underwent an agricultural boom. Farmers started clearing forests for cultivation and adopted better plows. More importantly, they embraced scientific crop rotation, planting different crops in the same soil across different seasons to boost fertility. Specifically, they began planting forage crops like legumes and grasses. These new forage crops were used as highly nutritious feed for livestock. The biological result was immediate. Cattle and sheep became healthier, and their populations exploded, leading to a sudden, massive increase in Europe's meat supply. This sudden abundance of meat created a structural dependency on Indian spices. Whether they needed to cook the meat or preserve it for the winter, a rapidly growing European population now required massive, reliable quantities of spice to maintain their food supply. We can see the geography of that dependency here. This map tracks the two main trade arteries connecting India to Europe before 1450. There was a land route passing through modern-day Iran and Afghanistan, and a maritime route crossing the Arabian Sea, up the Red Sea, and into Egypt. Both paths eventually converged in the Mediterranean. Then in 1453, the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople. The expanding Ottoman Empire slammed shut the gateway between East and West. The Ottomans were actively hostile to European powers. They established a tight blockade over these regions, effectively cutting all established trade routes. With the supply lines severed, the volume of spices reaching Europe plummeted, and prices spiked to levels that threatened to bankrupt the continent. To prevent economic collapse, European nations were forced to look at the map and attempt the impossible. They had to bypass the Middle East entirely by charting an unknown ocean route around the southern tip of Africa. Look at this cross-section of a 15th century Portuguese caravel. To navigate the deep ocean, European sailors adopted massive new ship designs and integrated critical navigational tools. Using the compass and the astrolabe, an instrument used to calculate latitude by the stars, long-distance maritime travel finally became scientifically feasible. The nation leading this charge was Portugal, driven largely by Prince Henry the Navigator. Driven by the goal of finding a direct sea route to India, he funded a massive state-sponsored exploration program. In 1454, the Roman Catholic Church issued a papal bull, granting him exclusive rights to discover this southern path. But pushing into the unknown was agonizingly slow. Despite the immense funding and state support, Portuguese navigators spent decades creeping down the African coast. In fact, it took them until 1471 just to cross the equator. The breakthrough finally arrived in 1487 under King John II. A navigator named Bartholomew Diaz was probing the western coast of Africa when his fleet was caught in a massive maritime storm. The violent winds blew his ships completely off course, pushing them out to sea and carrying them past the southernmost tip of the African continent. Renaming the location to the Cape of Good Hope reflected a new geographic reality. Africa had a southern limit, and the maritime path to India was physically open. While Portugal pushed south, their rival Spain placed a high-stakes gamble on heading west. In 1492, an Italian navigator named Christopher Columbus convinced the Spanish crown that since the Earth was round, he could reach India faster by sailing blindly straight across the Atlantic. Columbus failed to reach India. Instead, he made a colossal historical accident. He crashed into a completely unknown landmass, eventually realizing he had stumbled upon the Americas. This sudden discovery triggered an immediate geopolitical crisis. Portugal and Spain, the two global superpowers of the era, were suddenly on the brink of war over who held the legal rights to these massive new territories and the theoretical ocean routes to India. The conflict was resolved in 1494 with this document, the Treaty of Tordesillas. To settle the dispute, negotiators drew an imaginary line on the map, exactly 1,300 miles west of the Cape Verde Islands, physically splitting the Earth in two. With a single stroke of a pen, Spain secured a total monopoly on the Americas. But in exchange, Portugal received the undisputed legal mandate to finish their century-long race to India without Spanish interference. In 1497, Portugal's new ruler, King Manuel I, decided it was time to execute the final phase of their plan. He tasked a navigator named Vasco da Gama to take a fleet and follow the exact route Bartolomeu Diaz had documented around the Cape. Da Gama successfully rounded the Cape of Good Hope and continued up the eastern coast of Africa to Mozambique. Anchored there were multiple Indian merchant ships, hard proof that a vast trade network existed. Realizing he needed local expertise for the final leg of the journey, Da Gama hired an experienced Indian sailor named Abdul Majid. Using his intimate knowledge of the monsoon winds, Majid expertly guided the Portuguese fleet straight across the Arabian Sea. Dropping anchor in Calicut in 1498 meant the Portuguese had successfully plugged themselves into a highly sophisticated multinational trade network that had functioned for centuries. Take a look at this antique map. The Mediterranean blockade had been bypassed, transforming India from a distant legend into a reachable geographic target for European naval power. By bypassing the Ottoman monopoly, Western Europe unlocked a direct pipeline to the world's most valuable commodities. This immediately triggered an era of rapid wealth accumulation and established long-term naval dominance for the European powers. When you trace the events backward, a specific causal chain emerges. A shift in European plowing techniques, the decision to plant forage grasses, created massive demand for meat preservation, which forced the remapping of the planet. Vasco da Gama's arrival achieved the immediate goal of enriching European monarchs and bypassing the Ottoman blockade. But by linking these two worlds directly by water, it laid the permanent groundwork for the eventual European colonization of the Indian subcontinent.